Music bed. Music bed. Music bed.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's event. My name is Brett Ward. I'm the General Manager of International Marketing for Brickworks Building Products. And whether you're joining us here in Sydney or anywhere across Australia, thank you for being with us this evening. We're excited to be broadcasting to you for the very first time live from our new broadcast studio here in Sydney. In the spirit of reconciliation, Brickworks acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all gathered and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. At Brickworks, we're proud to be able to provide a platform for the sharing of ideas and discussion surrounding architecture and design via our inDETAIL speaker series. And throughout this year, we'll bring you a diverse range of topics and speakers from across Australia and around the world. Now tonight, it gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce our guest speaker, Camilla Block of Durbach Block Jaggers. I'm also pleased to welcome and introduce my guest host for this evening, architect, writer and educator, Stephen Barrity. Camilla and Stephen, thank you both for joining me this evening. Now Stephen, let's start with you. If you could kindly give our audience an introduction to Camilla and her background.
Thanks, Brett, and thank you to Brickworks. Hi, Camilla, and welcome. Before Brett and I have a brief conversation with you, let me give our audience a bit of an introduction. Camilla Block is a director of Durbach Block Jaggers. She graduated from the University of Sydney with a Bachelor of Architecture honours in 1991 and joined Neil Durbach in practice in 1992. In 1998, the office of Durbach Block Architects was established, becoming Durbach Block Jaggers in 2010. Camilla has been a design principal in all of the major projects of Durbach Block Jaggers. Camilla has taught, lectured, exhibited, judged awards and been published both nationally and internationally, and received an honorary appointment as an adjunct professor from UTS, University of Technology, Faculty of Design, Architecture and Building in 2014. Durbach Block Jaggers create beautiful, site-sensitive buildings that rise to the challenges of each site and each client, some of which you will see tonight. Most recently, Durbach Block Jaggers were awarded the 2020 National Harry Seidler Award for Commercial Architecture and the Emil Soderstone Award for Interior Architecture for the Phoenix Central Park Performance Space and Gallery with John Wardle Architects. The project was also awarded the New South Wales Architecture Medallion, the Sir G. Stevenson Award for Commercial Architecture, the John Verge Award for Interior Architecture, D-Zine Cultural Building of the Year, and the Horbury Hunt Award for Brickwork in the commercial category. DBJ have received the Robin Boyd Award 3 times for the best residential project in Australia, as well as state and national architecture awards across all building types, including public, education, commercial, residential, heritage, and urban design. Very impressive indeed. Camilla, let's begin our conversation. And without giving away anything that will be in your presentation, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice?
Gee, you've covered such a lot. I guess we're 3 directors, Neil Durbach, myself and David Jaggers, and we've been working together for nearly 30 years. And that kind of longevity in a relationship, a working relationship, has an amazing shorthand that we've developed, I think, over time. And we have an amazing team, all architects. We all work as architects, draw, design. I dream of having a PA, but there isn't one yet.
Okay, so how would you describe your design philosophy? Does DBJ have such a thing?
You know, that question always makes me sort of slightly panic. It's not a short answer question, or we've never really had a short answer to that question. So maybe I'll hop over that one,
Okay.
and we'll cover more of our work in the presentation.
I think it'll come through the work and maybe through our discussion afterwards.
Yeah.
Camilla, an interest for me in looking at your career path, was there a moment in your life that led you to become an architect, or any one person that sort of influenced you to take that path?
You know, I don't think it's one person in particular. It's almost like people as a series of people as kind of signposts. I guess it would start with my mum, who loved breaking into building sites. Sue Rice, one of my first tutors at university, my school art teacher, and probably Neil, I think, was the people along the way that kept me focused on what it is to be an architect.
Okay.
Camilla, how do you see design improving our quality of life and how we work, live, consume and connect?
Well, I guess building is one thing and design is another, and I think those things have slowly taken form over time and become less about the basics and more about a kind of refinement. But I think it's important not to confuse design with shopping, and also to value longevity over consumerism. And I think we're at that point, I think, poised to change because we need to.
That's good. Good answer.
Something I'm interested to know is
Ping pong.
what's working with Neil, I guess, in particular. What's a typical workday life, or workday like for you at work?
Typical is always a tricky question because, you know, our days are not the same. But in terms of just the logistics, I guess most people are there by 9:30. Neil seems to think 10:30 is early. I try and have no more than 3 coffees a day. I guess every day feels like a crazy day. It's never boring, but it's hard. My favourite days, I guess, are the days without meetings, where you can just get on with what you do rather than juggling and anticipating.
And how do you work with each other across the practice? Is there set demarcated roles, or do you work across the single projects together, or you've got your own projects? How do you sort of work the roles and responsibilities within the practice?
Well, you know, we're a team of 12 people, so we all work across all stages, and it's sort of seamless, and we share roles. We don't have this is your job and this is your role. We never have, actually. And our major form of communication is eavesdropping.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm interested to know, through the way your educational area roles, what's the sort of one bit of advice you would sort of give commonly to emerging architects?
Architects or students?
Students. Well, either or, students and or younger emerging architects. So, say students.
Look, I don't want to sound 104, but I think you need to learn to draw by hand. I don't think that underestimates the value of working digitally, but I think it's really important to be able to draw by hand as a tool, as a sort of shorthand. And I wish people would read more books. You know, I think there's only so much you can do by sort of image. You know, it's not Hinge architecture, or what's the other one called? Dating app. You know, where you go, yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
no, no, no. I think there's more to architecture than that.
Stephen, anything else from you?
No, I think I'm looking forward to your presentation, Camilla. I know that it's going to be very rich, and that we'll have an opportunity to have a further discussion based on what you talk about tonight after the event. So I'll talk to you again then.
Okay. Thank you.
Camilla, thank you very much for giving everyone your personal insights. It's great that you can share those with our audience. Look, we'll now take a very short break as we invite Camilla and Stephen to the main stage to continue tonight's event and see Camilla's presentation. We'll see you shortly.
Hi, I'm William Smart. I'm the Creative Director of Smart Design Studio. Innovation was very important to us, and we also understand that not all clients are people who want to invest in innovation. They want tried and tested solutions. So we sought innovation on sustainability, and we also saw it on structural design. And the shape is called a catenary shape, and it's the same shape as holding a string. So if you were to hold a string, it will form an arc, and the arc is called a catenary. If you flip it up the other way, so it goes upwards, the pressure that pushes out equalises with the pressure that pushes down. So gravity is balanced in perfect harmony. And that means that the load of the brick is evenly distributed down to the ground.
Good evening again, everyone. Tonight, I'm very pleased to be in the Brickworks Design Studio in Sydney to enjoy a presentation from one of Australia's leading award-winning architects, Camilla Block.
That's it?
That's it.
Gee, it's a relief to be amongst real faces. It's a bit strange. Thank you to Brickworks for the invitation to speak here tonight, and thank you to Stephen, who, with a mixture of patience and perseverance, finally wrestled me to the ground and got me here. I'm going to miss our February phone calls, Stephen. Is it this year? Well, it is. I'm finally here. So I actually read my talk to my husband, and he said it was a bit boring. But I said it's for architects, and he said, well, then it's okay then. Stephen asked me to talk about our office more broadly, how DBJ works. So Stephen asked me to talk about our office broadly, how DBJ works. And I imagined it as a kind of taking of the temperature of the office. And coincidentally, I can bring you some breaking news that after nearly 30 years, we are in the process of being certified for QA. We actually achieved stage 1 certification last Friday, and our auditor said our systems are customised and alive. I thought, well, you know, maybe that's the answer to your question, Stephen. That's our design philosophy, customised and alive. In some ways, we all rebel against the idea of quality certification a little bit, perhaps because surely in some way, our quality is borne out by the buildings we've already made, not the filing system that sits behind it. However, it has been an amazing thing to go through our office, its work and its systems over a nearly 30-year period. We found some classic stuff. Our fee proposal from 1999 to the Holmans proudly says that we work on computer. There are whole libraries entirely in German and in Danish. We found lists of stuff supposedly stored in Neil's garage, but long since turned to compost, I'm afraid. But I'm by nature an optimist, and I think something good and unanticipated will come from this. Through our IT review, I have finally got my kids off my Apple ID, and I generally try to be the cheer squad, not the jeer squad. And then we hit the business plan. Anyone who's done QA, then you hit the business plan, and then we just thought, we've never really had one of these, not written down anyway. And bear in mind that Neil and I started working together around the same time as the guy that started Amazon in his garage. They used to ring a bell every time they sold a book, but after a while they had to turn it off because it never stopped ringing. Today that business is worth $1.7 trillion. Like, I'm not even really sure what a trillion is. I can't visualize. I think it's 1,000 billion, and a billion is a million or something. Anyway. There's no T in our turnover. Maybe we should have had a business plan. But I did learn to make charts out of Excel spreadsheets, which is actually quite a fun way to graphically nutshell money. And I did get some attention from my business partners when I showed them the pretty colours. It also refocused on us as a group, on all the work we have done together, which is a different kind of audit. So I read this beautiful book recently called How to Be Both by Ali Smith, which is about the making of frescoes. As you know, this is an artwork which is painted directly into the plaster on walls. The visible outer layer becomes a hard calcified surface that can last for centuries. Behind the painting sits a cartoon, which is mostly never seen. So the idea is that there's a cartoon that sits behind the image, and it's only ever seen when the face becomes visible. There are so many parallels to this outline in design. Behind any finished product is an armature, a skeleton, an underlying structure, a template, an X-ray, or a guide. It makes for an interesting discussion about seeing. What is seen first? The layer you see, or the foundation sketch? Is it about what you see or how you see? I think as architects, we present the finished product to the world, the outer surface. Perhaps we share some detail or insight into the way a design has been arrived at, but this is done in reverse and often gives a clarity after the fact that possibly wasn't there along the way. In fact, for us as architects, we see the project the other way around. We see the sketch first. We are working towards the finished product, the outer layer. So for us, the first sight of the project is the cartoon, the foundation outline. So at DBJ, each project has this complex understory. This is a number of models made for a single house, at the sort of first sketch models. This layer is so rich and worked. It is also full of paths not taken, decisions made and unmade, directions set and reset. Each project has this skeleton. Next. But the office itself has its own parallel foundation. This is a layer of work not built or not shown that sits below the surface of the more visible projects. This is where we road test our thinking, drive experimentation, and in a lot of cases, build our ability to withstand rejection. So thanks again to Stephen. I've done a kind of historical audit of our work over time, from 1992 to 2021, 29 years. The first list is loosely top hits. If we had to assemble a best of album. Well, I guess that's weirdly, there's about 30 projects, so it's not a lot of bell ringing. But don't panic, I know this is a 40-minute talk. There's a single image per project, and this is a portrait of the office, not a deep view of a single project. The list excludes alterations and projects that are private for one reason or another. The build works are shown in the year they were completed, not the duration of the actual project. That is like the lag time, which, as you know, can be anywhere from 2 to 10 years. This is House Podless, which was already under construction when I joined Neil. We handmade the lights and spent weeks designing a single handrail. This is our Einfeld apartment, which was a baptism of fire in building in a strata building. Foster Street, which was a breakthrough project for us and the start of a very long friendship with Dan and Lyndall Droger. This is the Olympic amenities. This was our contribution to the Olympics in 2000. Yes, toilets. So this is Commonwealth Place, which was won in a national competition and as much a landscape project as a building project done with Sue Barnsley. Next. This is House Spry, which was a steep learning in contracts, loophole engineering and facade design. House Holman, which was the start of a lifelong publishing loop, which the Holman House seems to have its own life out there in the publishing world, and a long friendship with the clients. It's also an incredible garden by Jane Irwin. Brick Pit Ring. This was also an invited competition and probably the most improbable thing designed by us that actually got built. Elizabeth Bay House, this was a temporary installation and it never got old, so it's very fondly remembered. This is House Herdlicker, which took a few sharp turns before actually being built, and one last one, rest in peace. Suzanne Sports School headquarters. This is a building of workplace, but also gallery and garden, and the seed for many other projects with Naomi Milgram. This is Rosalind Street, which is an amazing project that we did with Ron White and has become the home of our office. This is the Browns Mountain House, which is our best kept secret project. House Sixel, which is the second best kept secret project, and also the seed of other projects with Margaret Sixel. Garden House, which was, funnily enough, an invited competition for a house, and a house that's slowly disappearing into its garden, also with Sue Barnsley. Lovelace exhibition for the Powerhouse Museum, also an invited competition, also temporary, and an armature to showcase incredible objects. Was an amazing thing to see Australian artists from all over sending in these beautiful lace objects. The North Bondi Surf Lifesaving Club. This project took 7 years. It's very visible in the neighbourhood that both Neil and I live in, which is kind of a nightmare, actually. People constantly tell you what they think. And I've got so many good stories about blokes, but because this is recorded, I don't think I can tell you. This classic moment where the project manager said that Neil would present the design and Durbach's, and he waved at me vaguely, would take the notes. I'm trusting he's not going to see this tonight. This is the science faculty, which we did with BVN, also an invited competition, an incredible learning curve for us, and a fantastic, generous relationship with Blythe Wallenfield, with Abby Galvin in particular. This is the largest project value for us completed to date. And at the same time, we were doing the Balmain apartment, which was almost the sort of inverse, the most intense, tiny project which was happening concurrently. So this is Tamarama House, and the brief for this house was The Girl from Ipanema. So I'll leave that one with you. R7 Barangaroo, which was an invited competition for Lend-Lease. Omnia, which is also an invited competition, Rosalind Street's kind of grown-up sibling. This is our Phoenix Central Park project with the amazing Judith Nielsen and a collaboration with John Wardle, and perhaps the seed of new things with John. This is House Taurus, also an invited competition for a house. The house was as much infrastructure as house and took 10 years. Neil visited this site from his kayak, so please don't tell the OH&S auditor. House Droga. This is our second project for the clients for Foster Street, which is a holiday house in Palm Beach, which has just been completed. House Morgan, we're getting there, 2020. House Morgan is just completed, and people are saying it feels Moorish and a departure, so interesting. This is the GPT lobby in Melbourne, which is also just completed but is a possible victim of COVID since we couldn't visit the site for more than a year. This is Soper Place, which is a DA that we've just lodged, and we've just got the feedback from the community today. So some of it is, this is a few excerpts. One person said, "Stop making everything orange. Let's start there." And then somebody said, "This is dead set so ugly, you've got to be joking." This is Fabric House in Newcastle, which is almost done, a new apartment building, and the Pencil Tower, which was also an invited competition and is also submitted a DA at the end of last year. So this is the audit part, right? Neil seemed to get a bit depressed when he saw this. He said, "We've built so little." But I said, although it's hard to see your own work clearly, I do think as a body of work it packs a punch. Across typologies and materiality, the projects are related but not repetitive. They're experimental without being noisy or dated. And look, only one has been demolished. We've always said that longevity is an important component of sustainability. So the next is the same 29 years, but the unrealised version, the lost competitions, the unbuilt projects over the same time frame. So this list is also a big edit. It probably is about 30% of the competitions done in our office. Some are mourned a lot and some less so. This is actually the very first competition that I worked on with Neil. And this is for Chifley Square, where our idea was to line Chifley Square in overscaled mimes. Unfortunately, at the time, somebody said we already have Aboriginal art in the city, and that was that. It was done with Maningrida Art Centre. This is a competition in San Francisco. This is St. Clair Housing, which we won but was never built. It was kind of a suburban, a sort of suburban housing scheme that was possibly not in the right place. The Mining Museum, which was an early version of a stepping spiral. The Wagga Civic Centre, we were shortlisted to 5 and then lost. The informal feedback was that it was too Corbusian. This is Honeysuckle Housing, where we were awarded second prize, and we consoled ourselves that second prize goes to the most interesting scheme. The housing was organised by aqueducts, collecting water and also being dividing site walls. This is our design for a headland at Giba Park, which I'm still gnashing my teeth about that one. This was our scheme for Federation Square, also lost, also a bit of gnashing of teeth. This is our scheme for the Olympic housing, which we never submitted. This is as far as we got, a single collage and a couple of sketches. This is RMIT student housing, which we actually won the competition, but it wasn't built. Scots Church, we lost. The Gallery for Brisbane, we were shortlisted and then lost. King Street Housing, lost. Sea Lanes Housing, lost. Perth Centre Stage, lost. Newcastle Gallery, also lost. I do mourn this scheme. I think it could have been very interesting. This was a design for Sofitel to put a bar in the courtyard. I'm really not sure what happened there. Park Street. This we actually got as far as a DA and then somehow it wasn't built. This is our Think Brick Infinity House, which was won through an ideas competition, and I think it's the only one we got a cash prize for. This is a prefab house designed to be on trucks. We're still waiting for orders. It's called the Clock House. It can rotate depending on the site. Another George Street invited comp, which we lost. I'm trying to make it sound perky, but it's quite a... Parramatta also invited competition, which we lost. Green Square Library. Oh yeah, we lost that. Sorry, next one. This is an exhibition that we actually was all documented, all priced, all tendered, all ready to go for the Powerhouse Museum. We were going to build a full-scale apartment from the Unité, and it didn't happen. Abandoned. This is a greatly mourned project. Circular Quay invited comp, lost. Cooking School invited comp. We won this one, but wasn't built. A proposal for C1 at Barangaroo, not built. I realised that actually in the audience are some of the people who we lost these competitions to. Gate 9 invited competition, also lost. I think we lost to Philip on that one. Oh no, Last Nemo, that's right. Shade House at South Bank was an invited comp which we won, but they actually just built something else. I'm still not sure why. George Street. Invited comp, also lost. This is a pavilion for the Sherman Centre for Contemporary Ideas, which was an invited comp which we won, but was not built, also for reasons beyond anyone's control. You can see why we can't predict our day. Wentworth Point Housing, invited comp, which we lost. Indiana Tea House, an invited comp which we won, but was not built. The premise of the competition perhaps was not well thought through. Darlinghurst Road, lost. Harry Butler, lost. Lost. Another winner in the audience. Next one. I'm finishing on this one because this was an invited comp which we won, and our fingers are crossed. I guess it's interesting when you look at in our office it's so small that actually some of these projects take place in Wagga Wagga or Canberra. In our filing system they are called Wagga Wagga, like we've got the whole city, or Canberra, we have the whole city, but actually it's just a very small part of each competition felt like a sort of city not taken or occupied. Like we could have moved to Brisbane or we could have worked in Wagga, but I do think that our practices wins, those sort of chinks in the armour of the way projects are procured, have allowed us to break into otherwise closed territory for a practice of our size. This is the two merged, our audit. I'm sure that's probably evident. I think it looks a bit better like that, don't you think, Neil? So I thought I'd show you 4 new projects that kind of distill the fundamentals of our practice, and they also have lots of bricks in them. So the first thing is that really our belief that everything is contemporary, that the context is contemporary. A building can be both contextual and contemporary. It doesn't have to be old is old, new is new. Actually, everything is seen from our own eyes and our own perspective. And this comes from a direct conversation with real place and buildings. And it is bound into a love of many architectures and a willingness to penetrate their logic. So this is our new project at Newcastle East End. It's a small apartment building on an existing heritage building. And it perfectly encapsulates our approach to context, I think. It is both contemporary and respectful. It's an eclectic building built on the language of the building below. So this is basically the bricks are graded from the sandy yellow of the heritage building to the dark bricks above. And all the bricks are from Astral, Namoy and Bowral. The second point is about clarity and complexity. I think that we always work very hard to get a very clear diagram for what we're building, what we're making, the sequence of spaces. And I think that underlying clarity underpins a sort of spatial and programmatic complexity. It kind of allows you to be both gentle and sculptural and easy in some way at the same time. I think that this is part of what drives longevity and fascination. So the way spaces are modulated and sequential from one space to the next. And I'll show you Phoenix Central Park. So this project is a collaboration with John Wardle's office for the arts philanthropist Judith Nielsen. We worked together with JWA on the materials palette, the strategy, the courtyard and the street wall. John's office designed the gallery and we designed the performance space. So today I'm only going to show you our side of the project. But it was and remains a fantastic shared endeavour with John, underpinned by friendship, respect, humour and a lot of us teasing John, really. It's similar in some ways to the Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch, where the outside is mute and opens onto a playground of crazy within. The bricks are made by by Kraus, handmade by Kraus, and it's a fabric kind of mute skin with a very sort of gentle cast of characters on our side of 4 key windows. It's kind of a gentle urban threshold with indicators so that you can sort of peek in and have a sense of what's happening, but it is quite mute. Once you cross the threshold, you enter into a shared courtyard space and you go into the gallery on one side and into the performance space on the other. John's spaces are many. I think there's something like 16 different galleries, and ours is singular. So Judith's brief for the space was a new kind of space, not a theatre, not prescriptive or directional, but it allowed a kind of staging from many perspectives, many entry points, many possible ways of occupying the space, both raw and open. So I think it was, early on we thought it was similar in spirit to an Elizabethan theatre in the round, where the audience or the stalls are as much part of what you see as the stage. So the performance space is a large timber bell, and it's mostly hollow, it's mostly space that takes up most of our envelope. It's an inner world beyond an enigmatic and mute facade, an architecture of held peace. I think we were quite interested in this idea of sfumato, like this sort of gentle glow. It's quite interesting to make a room that has almost no natural light. It's not something that architects we do very often. This is a folded out elevation of the timber. I think part of the way that the space is lined is a reimagining of a semi-industrial material, which is cross-laminated timber, into a complex 3D bell-shaped space with an integral acoustic design and technology. The timber was made in Germany from our 3D model and cut from flat sheets and shipped to Sydney. It was assembled like a large jigsaw puzzle in under 3 weeks. It feels both soft and tough, rough and smooth. This is part of the model making exercise in physical form to test how it would feel. John always says he's got, I don't know how many, 48 skylights, and we've got 1. That was it on the slide before, but don't worry, keep going. Keep going. The space itself is embedded in a series of smaller spaces that are kept dark and small, and they almost have more singular moments: a bench, a small place to rest, a glass of champagne, a handrail, a funny detail, so that the bell is always the hero, it's always the key space, but you see it and re-see it from these smaller vantage points. You can sort of sneak a look always. So you're not, what was interesting about Judith is that she wasn't wanting doors to shut and a kind of formal, now the performance starts, you shut the doors and now it's over. She was much more interested in you being able to leave if you wanted to. You could see it from a distance, you could peek in, you could come and go. It's much more like for performance art. And here's some of the things that they are doing in there. They did something like 300 performances during COVID. This, if you're following it on Instagram, Phoenix Central Park are doing dance. They're curating dance videos in this space, including every space in the building, as well as the turntable, the car turntable. And they're incredible, incredible films. And they're selling tickets, by the way. Well, actually, they're free, but you can jump online and get them. And then there's the garden on the roof, which is almost this kind of, we always explained it to Judith like it was like going to heaven, that it would be light and bright. It's a complete antidote to where you are in the city. And it's always this amazing moment where you get this incredible light, bright, huge view of the sky, which is so unexpected in that part of Chippendale. This is the artists' retreat and where they plan performances, and which brings me to principle 3, which is gardens and pleasure. So I think that we've always worked equally with gardens and buildings in our work. It's almost a key, like an essential ingredient of what we do from the very first footprint of a building. We see gardens as an equal partner in our work. The garden is complementary, it defines the site, it blurs and edits and connects to the wider place, it makes the outlook for the rooms, and it is also the lens to see the building. So this is a house I talked about very briefly in the list before in Palm Beach that is incredibly simple in plan. It occupies the minimum footprint of a site that we could manage. It's very straight, very simple in plan, and very complex in section. It's kind of woven into the site so that it links to all the levels of terraces and gardens, and has, I think, under 20% coverage of the site. So the garden was done with Sue Barnsley. I think it's sort of where longevity lies in a house, I think, in its siting and its orientation. It makes spaces that are both easy and complex. This is almost just taking you through the house. I think that's the entry, yeah, looking back at the entry. And links between rooms and to gardens are both direct and unexpected. I think we're quite interested in a robust detailing and also fine detailing. There's always that feeling that the handwriting of a house should feel like you know which part of the sentence you're in. Are you in the small detailed moment, or are you in the big, sculptural, clean, unadorned? And here you see the pics of the garden. And because it's a sloping site, there are all sorts of different levels. And then this is going up to a roof terrace, which is a kind of private eyrie that overlooks the beach. It's carved out of a tiled roof. So the green connects to the green beyond when you're both in the space and when you look at the house from the beach. I guess my last thing is to say that architecture does have a language. And I remember speaking at, I think, some panel or something, and the convener was saying something like, well, when we shouldn't have a secret language, we should be able to speak to everybody. And I sort of think, well, why not? Why can't we have a secret language? We do have a very deep history of architecture, a legacy of buildings, a legacy of thinking. And although each project is unique, actually the constraints, of course, are unpredictable, and each project is approached as a unique project, but the language and history of architecture are not. They're there, they underpin our work. They come with clues and beginnings that are endless, to see and understand what others have done, to really see and suspend disbelief and learn other ways, to see great works of architecture as talismans that hold us steady in quite a bumpy ride. So the history of architecture is not an end, it's a beginning. This is our Pitt Street project, the Pencil Tower, which also has some kind of crazy life of its own in publishing at the moment, which is based really on, Architecture 101, a portrait of a column, a base, a shaft, and a capital. And you can see that the facade is grading slowly from horizontal to vertical. It has a sort of a base at the street level, and then a tower which is 5.7 metres wide and 100 metres tall, something like that. And I've included the plan because we've copped quite a lot of flack on the internet where people say it's great to see this student work, but really it shouldn't be shown in this forum, or that it's just a cartoon, but actually it is a 173 bedroom hotel with a 3-story shared lobby on the street and a hammam, spa, bath, pool, sensual sort of paradise on the roof. So fresco actually means fresh. This image is from the middle 1400s. I mean, I think it's just incredible. This man has been freshly haggard and virile for over 550 years. And divide that by 10, and I'm now 55, nearly 55. I'm at the age where women used to retire if they worked at all. I'm older than ScoMo. I mean, that's terrifying, right? My nephew his girlfriend, the children of friends are all starting to study architecture. They're at their beginning. And it's a question that's really important, I think, to us as an office. Like, how does your work stay fresh? Although I have come to hate the word humble, I do think humility is required to stay fresh. And I just want to share a beautiful description from a book called, it's a book on lifelong learning, which is about the beginner's mind. It's the naive optimism, the hyper-vigilant alertness that comes with novelty and insecurity, the willingness to look foolish, and the permission to ask obvious questions. This is the unencumbered beginner's mind. And what you don't also see in this finished image of this man from the 1450s, is that because fresco is actually paint that is applied to wet plaster, the artist has to prepare only what can be painted that day. And I love the idea of the whole being built in bite-sized pieces. It's called a giornata, a day's work. Thank you. Now, where do I go?
Camilla, thank you very much for that very insightful presentation. I'd now like to invite Camilla, Stephen, and of course our audience to join us on a question and answer session from our broadcast studio. So we'll be back with you again in about 1 minute's time. We'll see you in a moment. Thank you.
Throughout the past 110 years, the face of building materials has continued to evolve. We're here for a lifetime of living. This is Brickworks. More than brick, and more than just building products, we are a foundation for today's lifestyle and a leader for today's style. We manufacture a wide range of building products. Products like no other. Local and international innovation. Sourced from around the world to exceed customer expectations. Distinctive and luxurious products. Beautiful products that stand the test of time. Building inspiration and innovation with an unmatched standing of style. This is Brickworks.
Thank you for that beautiful presentation. Really good, really good. Just to finish, or to start with your final project, the hotel, just a little point. I really love those portals you've created for views. Rather than looking at the building next door, you've created these wonderful little view portals, and I look forward to seeing that. So thank you very much.
Us too. Another fingers crossed project.
Fingers crossed that it gets through. Yeah. Yes. This seems to be a new thing in Sydney with pencil towers. This is the second one of these I think I've seen.
No, there's only one.
There's only one?
Yeah.
Okay. Some questions. I wonder if you can discuss the balancing act between the poetic and the practical in the work. And for you, it's probably instinctive, but I wonder whether you can stand back and think about it and explain to us a little more about the balancing act that is played in the projects between that push and pull of the poetic and the practical, because the work is very poetic.
You know, I think Dave says it best. He says we all take turns at being reasonable. And I think that perfectly encapsulates the kind of push me, pull you of pulling a project away from the centre and then bringing it back. And it isn't a defined role by one person. And in a way, that's how I think we're like a tripod, the three of us. I think there's a kind of inherent stability in that relationship that allows you to test things, but also be held in what is doable, what is payable for, you know, all the things that as an architect you have to keep checking yourself up against. It's not a free-for-all.
No, but it's obvious that you've created this atmosphere between yourselves that allows that dialogue. Many offices don't have that. Many partnerships don't have that, so I think that's very special.
Well, see, I don't know anybody else.
No, that's okay. We're talking about you. So I really appreciate that that's a speciality in the way that you work and in the way that the projects are created, it seems, looking from the outside and what I know of how you work. But then you also talked about in the previous discussion that the interaction within your studio, it seems to me, is a bit like an orchestra or a band, but all of you can play many instruments, and so you're improvising with each other and playing off each other in a very interesting way that creates these wonderful happenstance situations that you then seize upon and create buildings out of.
Yeah, that's a very nice way of putting it. I think, yeah, sometimes sometimes we play better on some instruments. We don't let Neil touch the Excel spreadsheets.
Good, good, okay. Well, but that's also a good thing. But
Yeah.
you have other collaborators within the office too, so you have other people informing that.
You see, I do think that actually working, it's not just the three of us. We have a fantastic group of people who work with us and have worked with us for a long time. There's a longevity in the people that work with us too. And I think there's a sort of, perhaps it comes from model building, perhaps it comes from the design of the space we work in, but there is a feeling that you can kind of comment or say or have a thought on anything that's sort of current in
But
the
that's
office.
because you've allowed that to happen, and you've invited people in to work with you who you've decided are worthy of working with you.
Yeah, listen,
So
yesterday we were ordering lunch and I realised it was taking 4 of us to choose what to have. We're all gathered round the computer checking the, sometimes, we're having a look at our website and we say, do you like this grid or that grid? And suddenly there's 10 people standing there, because that is the spirit of the office,
Yeah,
that
that's-
everybody
that's a great thing.
has a voice.
And the work is rich because of that, I think.
Yeah,
That you've created that kind of atmosphere and therefore created that kind of work. Having said that, how do you then attune this to your clients? Every client is different and some are more positive than others to work with. So how do you tune this collaborative spirit to dealing with the interaction with the client?
Look, clients is not one thing.
No, that's
You
why I
know,
ask. There's
don't-
many answers to this
yeah,
question,
there's-
I'm sure, but
I don't know how to answer that, because some clients really like seeing all 3 directors, and some clients really just want one person that they can communicate with, whether it's the project architect or a director. Some people like to have meetings with everybody they can think of. It's a difficult thing to
that's fine.
generalise
I
about.
expected a broader answer, so that's okay. I think you have to then attune your interactions with each client accordingly.
Yeah,
And some would be better than others to deal with.
yeah. It's recorded, right?
Oh, I'm not asking for any personal details. No. Phoenix is such a significant project. Can you somehow explain how you felt when you won the job, and then how you felt working on the job?
We spend, like John makes this point very well, but we spend a lot of time trying to get work. Pitching has become so onerous, whether it's a competition or a 20-stage EOI or a fee letter, or even getting a simple house now, people go to 10 architects. So the mystery and the kind of magic of Judith's job was she just hired us.
How unusual.
I know. There we were. She chose us.
Yeah.
And so in a way it felt like we just sort of stepped into it, almost not seeing just how magic it was, until we then met Judith, who basically said, I want, it was so open-ended and so broad and so visionary. In the way that she sort of talked to us, it was, I want you to do the best building you can do. And she's quite short in her statements. She
Yes.
doesn't elaborate. So, you had to pinch yourself, really.
Sure. But you never found that onerous, did you? It became a joy to work on?
Look, it was always an amazing project. Sometimes it's a bit like tilting at windmills. You were sort of second guessing at what maybe isn't the right thing, because you had to test it out and see. It's quite a challenge to make a performance space that performs acoustically but isn't shut off. And so the acoustics was a big sort of push me, pull you. And it's not something that you necessarily see, but when you're there, the fact that the acoustics work so beautifully is critical.
That's great. And was the materiality an evolution, or?
Yes.
Yeah, so can you talk about that evolution?
Well, the form of the bell was quite, that was a sort of fine-tuning exercise. We did a lot of work on fine-tuning it, but pretty much the form of it was quite sort of established quite early on, but it was going to be gold. And it was gold for a long time, but it's really difficult to make any gold surface acoustic. So actually...
Too hard.
Well, we
Harder
tested it a
surface.
lot. Yeah, it's too high, it's reflective, and the minute you start to puncture it, it actually just falls apart.
Yeah.
So the timber was, thank goodness, a change. Quite late in the piece, and a good change, we thought.
Was there any trigger for that, or you just went exploring for materials and struck on that one?
Well, we always thought she liked the gold, and she thought we liked the gold. So it probably went on longer than it needed to.
Well, good. I mean, it's a great outcome. Do you think that dialogue and exploration about that project, it also helped having John as a sounding board and someone to pick on through the process?
The thing is, we talk to each other as architects, but we often don't say what we really think. We have, a sort of aggressively passive way of...
Politeness.
Yeah, politeness.
Yes.
And I think that once you're working in with a team, like we were with John, and John was working with us, actually we genuinely said what we thought about his side, and he said the same about ours. And that was really fantastic.
Yeah, I think John's a good person to be able to have that kind of dialogue with, so it's benefited.
He loves to talk. I mean, he loves thinking, and he loves exploring, and he loves, that's, tinkering. So, and we also would say what we thought about his side, and he has a fantastic team too. So, that was...
It was a great combination.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rocky ride, that job. So actually sometimes it was really reassuring to know that as you were two architects in the fray.
Was the construction process a difficult one, or has just had its normal hiccups?
Yeah, it was a difficult one.
Difficult. Okay, we'll leave it at that. In a broader sense, and you can pick out the better examples if you want, I wonder if you could tell us about your collaborations during construction with builders and with subcontractors. With that latest house, you were talking about that level of detail and the fineness of everything coming together. And the same with Phoenix, the detail is incredible. Tell us how you managed to, or how you create a dialogue between the people that you're working with, that they rise to the challenge too.
We were looking at the early drawings of that house, and what's amazing is that the DA drawings capture exactly what the house is, more or less. But so much, there is such a huge amount of content that takes a DA set of drawings into a construction set. Yeah. And so much time and instruction, coercion, desperation goes into actually achieving those buildings, that you sometimes look back and you think, why is it so tricky?
Because people generally build the DA drawing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and so we don't have enough people with the skills and the need or the want to get to that level of detail.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that some builders are intuitively good at that. And actually what was interesting about Phoenix was that FDC, which are actually quite a commercial outfit, they really got their head around the building.
Good.
Because Boulevard did the early works and they stepped in about, halfway through. And that, it was an amazing relationship to build, because actually they brought things to the project that we didn't anticipate, and they...
Well, that's the great thing when you do have that kind of collaboration, that you have skills that you can trade, and and help each other along the way.
Yeah, I mean, Dave is really good at that because he speaks the language, and he also has a way of keeping the thing on track without anybody kind of having a meltdown, which, you know,
That's important.
it's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A very broad question. Why do you love architecture?
Do you know, I don't always love architecture.
Well, tell us about it.
Sometimes it drives me bonkers because I think, you know, like for example, it's like if you were a musician and you heard bad notes all the time, it sort of drives you crazy. But with architecture, it's like no one else is being driven crazy. They don't mind.
You're the only one that hears it.
Yeah. And you sort of think, well, how could you go and build that ugly piece of crap on my street? But no one else even notices. It's a kind of training that makes your eye, you know, very easily triggered. So that's the part I don't like. But I don't know, I find it reassuring that you can make things. I've always been somebody who makes things, but there's something so grand about architecture, that you're making things that really stay.
Well, you're making things that are creating experiences for people to live in, to work in. They're not just built artifacts, they are actually places that need the occupation as well.
Yeah, but there's something about going back to somewhere, like 6 months later, and the way it's been lived in, or the way that it's been kind of occupied, it feels so like it's a beginning point. It's not an end in itself. It's actually the way people use it. Like, I mean, Phoenix is incredible to see what happens in that space.
You've set a stage, and then they take ownership and provide the rest. Well, I think on that note, I think your summation tonight was great. The way that you put the pieces together, the timeline, all of those things, and I assure you,
Clicker, I hate that clicker.
we'll be talking about that later. But it's a beautiful body of work, and it is humble yet extremely invigorating as a body of work, and you should be very proud of it. So thank you very much for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brett, over to you.
Thank you, Stephen, and Camilla, thank you again for your involvement in our inDETAIL speaker series. I promise we're going to throw that clicker in the bin as soon as we walk out of this room. Stephen, thank you again for your involvement as always. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us for tonight's event. Please keep your eyes on the Brickworks website for more events like this, and make sure you subscribe to receive invitations for our upcoming events. I'm also excited to share that in late March we'll be launching our latest publication, which is Materiality 2021, which celebrates the best brick architecture in Australia and North America. So make sure you're on the mailing list to find out more. Thank you again for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.